because, and thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you for having me today. I'm delighted to be with you. And because of my background in business, we are going to talk primarily about business. But I want to go back to something that Lori said, and that's that I'm from Berlin, New Hampshire, because Berlin, New Hampshire is in so many ways a bellwether for our state. It is not the only region of the state that's struggling. We've got the western part of the state, we've got Claremont, we've got other parts of the state. But Berlin, and having gone back there a couple of weeks ago, is instrumental to the kinds of things that I'd like to talk about today. Berlin, New Hampshire, when I was growing up, was still a very vital community. It was about 16 or 17,000. I didn't know at that time that Berlin was already on the decline. At its heyday, it had 22 to 23,000. It was the fourth largest city in the state, and it had 8 trains a day coming in and out of it. I remember that. 8 trains a day coming in and out of it with passengers and with cargo. Since my time in Berlin, and when I went up a couple of weeks ago, when I arrived, I discovered they had E. coli in the water. I'm not sure what the cause of that was, but I do know that our infrastructure under the grounds in our cities is deteriorating, and we have a problem with it, to the tune of about $2.3 billion, by the way. And 2 days before that, they had lost 50 jobs from the car freshener company, the company that puts out those little green trees that you can put in your car for fresheners. A month and a half before that, they lost 150 jobs from Isaacson Steel. Both of those companies cited one particular reason for leaving, and that was the lack of transportation infrastructure and the cost that that they incurred in trying to transport their product. Remember the trains, they're gone today. So Berlin has now shrunk to under 9,000 people. I was reading several reports. I wanted to think about some innovative ideas and what they were doing around the country in depressed areas such as the North Country, so that I could share some of those ideas with them and we could talk about it. One report was particularly interesting to me. It's by a fellow named Bates, and I think it's out of the University of Chicago. And he talks, and he's a free market thinker. He said, you know, when industries and businesses move out, first order of business is wait. And I thought, oh Lord, if this is as far as he goes, we're in trouble. Berlin's been waiting for 5 decades. Then he went on to talk about the job of government, while you're waiting for new industries and new businesses to move in, is to put into place the infrastructure necessary for them to want to come and to stay and bring their jobs. That's what we haven't done with the North Country. That's what we're not doing. You cannot use your cell phone practically from Concord to Keene. I can't get text messages. I don't know what to do with my time anymore when I make that trek, because when you can't text and you can't cell phone and you can't call, I get a free ride. I mean, what do you do with that? So, so we are leaving parts of our state behind because we have not put into place the infrastructure to attract these new businesses. Now, you're all business people, so I'm going to give you some numbers that I don't always use in my stump speeches. But these numbers are so telling. On the one, because I want to get back to this infrastructure. On the one side of the ledger, every dollar that is spent for teachers, firefighters, pothole fillers, the folks who plow our roads at 3 o'clock in the morning so that we can get out and go to work, for every dollar that's spent, 40 cents of that is on the backs of taxpayers, property taxpayers. Okay. Now, some will argue, because we don't have any kind of broad-based tax, that's, you know, we can have one form or we can have the other. And it has worked. It has worked very well. New Hampshire has weathered recession after recession. We've got a diversified economy. About 8 years ago, some economists were starting to sound the alarm that we were at a tipping point. Now, I want to add to that figure the fact that it disproportionately hits our seniors. Okay. Now, add to that the fact that we are in the top 5 fastest growing states, aging states. The top 5 aging states, the silver tsunami, will be here before we can blink an eye. Those folks that we're now burdening most with the property tax are going into town hall meetings and saying, public safety for my home, education for my home. We are putting seniors in the immoral position of having to choose between their largest single asset and staying in their home, or the needs of the community, okay? And we are literally pitting grandparents against grandchildren in this game that we're playing. The other side of the ledger is, what do businesses want? And you know, there have been studies about that. And there's no magic formula. There's absolutely no magic formula. They want quality education. The top reason that businesses come to New Hampshire is for our educated and trained workforce. And we are taking money out of our schools. You may have noticed that the current legislature slashed the budget for the university system of New Hampshire by 50%. The second thing they want is that transportation infrastructure that you heard me talk about with the companies in Berlin, and communication infrastructure. One of the reasons that we can't get businesses to go to the North Country, and I learned that firsthand by staying overnight in a hotel up there, is you can't even send an email without it taking 15 minutes. Every time I was teaching a course this spring, so while I was up there, I was emailing students. No attachments, no fancy stuff, nothing. Hit the send button, and I would go back and watch the movie with my husband. Entertaining, but nonetheless, it took, you know, and I called downstairs at the hotel and I said, I must be on the wrong server. They said, oh no, we'll have to turn the routers a little bit. A call center wanted to locate in Berlin, New Hampshire. They were unable to. My understanding is they went to Nova Scotia. That's unacceptable. It is unacceptable. So businesses want good infrastructure, good schools, clean environment. We hear that over and over and over again from them. So how is New Hampshire doing? Well, in 2010, coming out of the recession, we were still doing pretty well. We actually see major spikes with business development and startups in the state. 2011, we tanked. 2012, we're an anemic 0.3%. In Forbes' recent November of 2011 list of best states to come to develop businesses or to start up businesses, we had fallen from 2010 at number 19 to 2011 at number 27. Ahead of us is one of the most taxed states in the country, New York, at 22. Growing, by the way, we're growing at 0.3%, New York's growing at 1.2. Ahead of them, at number 18, is Massachusetts, growing at 1.3, while we're growing at 0.3. Utah was the top state in the country with 2.5% growth rate, which is the national average. And more than double our gross state product. My fear is that we have now reached that stereotypical tipping point. That if we fail to make the investments in education, communication, transportation infrastructure, they will not come. And we are also now hearing anecdotal evidence from members of economic development committees that that is precisely the case. That they want a stable environment. They want to stop seeing, by the way, legislators show up on the Daily Show and the Colbert Report. That's one of the things they say. That's one of the things they say. We need stability in our state house. And they need a good education for their workforce. They need good communication infrastructure. They need good transportation infrastructure. So we're hearing it anecdotally as well. My background is from working class roots. And then I went on to get my master's in business. I am the one candidate in this race that can talk about the bridge between those two things. And we have the numbers, we have the metrics, and we can see the trend line. And the trend line is not good. And the one thing that keeps us from having a full-throated discussion about what our needs are in this state and how we're going to fund them is pledge politics. It is time to get rid of pledge politics and have an honest conversation with the people of this state and let them decide.